Welcome everyone. I hope you are all doing well and enjoy this event today's Apple Developer Club. And before we starting this meeting, I'm requesting everyone to make yourself mute to enjoy this event. And we will have a question answer time. So at when we are requesting for the question answer time, you should raise your hand and ask a question to speaker. And today we have an exciting event on scaling mobile app to 300 plus engineers and 100 million user. And I promise it going to be inspiring and exciting and memorable for everyone. Yeah. And now, uh, without further delay, I request to Vishal Bhai to start this session.
Sure. Can I take over?
Yes.
Okay. So today's presentation is about scale your apps to millions. Sorry, this is first time joining, so I think we'll keep the question answer later, right? After presentation is done.
Yes.
Usually I am okay if someone wants to ask in the middle of presentation, I'm fine with that as well, but let's keep it whatever this club prefers.
Okay, but anybody want a question? They raise the hand and they can ask a question.
Okay, sure. Cool. Yeah, so let's start. So first of all, disclaimer. So all the views in this presentation is my own, and it has nothing to do with my current employer, Uber. My intro. So I'm working as a senior software engineer, full stack engineer at Uber in San Francisco headquarters. It's been 5 years, for at least 5 years. Yeah. And intro about the topic. So we'll see some architecture patterns that we are using at Uber. There is a dependency injections. Then there is a RIP plugin to scale your apps and scale your features. And finally, we'll see the look at the build system we are using at the moment and how to support this 300 plus 500 plus engineers. Okay, so let's talk about the app journey. I'll keep this conversation casual. There is nothing. I'll switch between the presentation and code as well, so you guys know that what I'm talking about while discussing the architecture, right? So app journey. If you have a simple think about the day one at Uber. If you are building such app, like there will be a very simple presentation. You have a map. You have one button to book a ride, right? And there is one continuous polling call going on to figure out like how many drivers are around your area or around your location. And there is one button to book a ride, and there's one call to make a payment, right? It's very simple. Like if you start with the idea, it will be like 4 or 5 screens, and that's it. That's pretty much the entire app. You can build, ship in week. But imagine that that app takes off and you want to start adding new features. For example, you want to add more payment types. You want to support cash. You also want to think that if user is already on the ride, you can do certain things in the app, and you can't do certain things in the app. You want to add support multiple login types. You want to add more things, more features. So app starts getting bloated, right? You add more stuff, more states into it. And on top of that, you want to add more lines of business. So now you're just not moving people, you're also moving food, Uber Eats, right? You're also moving packages, Uber Direct. You're also moving the big containers, Uber Freight. So there's a lot of businesses you build around your core business. And suddenly end up with 500 engineers, 30 teams just working on one app, right? So that, like, how do you scale those things, and how do you manage those people, and how do you ship the code faster in production? So to give you a bit of idea of scale at Uber works, so you have 150 million. 30. Sorry. Okay. You have 150 million plus users across the world. You have 10 million drivers. You have 10,000 cities in Uber operates, 70 countries, 40 plus million languages, 40 plus languages, and 400 plus mobile engineers, and $144 billion market cap. This is only 3 or 4 mobile apps that Uber has supports. So that's the enormous scale at Uber operates. And now, if you think about at this scale, what are the problems you will encounter, right? So for example, suppose you join as a new engineer at this level, you first have to understand, like, okay, where should I put this code? Now you have to make sure that the core business should not get affected, right? So Uber's core business is ride, moving people around. And that should not get affected by any means, right? As soon as that gets affected, the entire company is down. And so suppose there is multiple lines of business, right? So if one change in one piece part of the business should not affect the another part of the business, because every business is a kind of running as a separate organization. So Uber Freight is runs as it has its own revenue, it has its own thing. Uber Eats runs as its separate organization, it has own revenue and everything, right? So it should not get affected. So you have to make sure that you build architecture in a way that it supports everything. And also you have to make sure that all it basically it supports every single business churning out the feature. And also, how do you test all of this? Because 50 teams simultaneously putting a lot of features every week, and how do you test all of this? And what happens is something breaks in the production. How do you identify that where the code breaks, and how do you roll back? It's a mobile application, so you have to understand that every code you ship takes 2 weeks to get into the user's hand, because 1 week takes Apple and another 1 week is adoption, right? So if you release the bug in the production, you have to wait for 2 weeks to fix that bug, right? So that's also not very ideal condition, and there shouldn't be any downtime. Downtime meaning that it should be a 99.99% reliable application, not just a crash. If button is not working to take a ride, that's also a problem. You need to identify that button is not working, because as soon as the code deploys into person's mobile phone, you have no idea what's going on there until unless you get some good analytics out of that mobile, right? And how does these teams and engineers work together, right? They should not step each other's toes, right? One person working in one organization should not able to modify the code in another org. And how how we compromise how you should not compromise the development speed, because speed is essence of the business, right? More speed you go, you have chances to win the market. And in Uber's case, is there's a lot of competition out there, so the speed is the only thing matters. And make sure that with this speed, every release is exceptional quality. Exceptional quality means UI and everything is fine, but the code quality has to be top notch, right? And fun fact at Uber is Uber does not have any QA team. We do not QA stuff. We don't even have a production staging or test environment. We just ship code to the production directly. We don't even we test it among ourselves and we just ship the code. But the point I'm making here is architecture is so solid that allows us to do this, like ship the code directly to the production. Okay, architecture at scale. So what is the philosophy should be behind the good architecture? So there are two parts of it. One is technical part and one is non-technical part. I think both part is important, and as an engineer, you should be involved in both part. So first of all, like you have to think through, like there should be a common understanding. It should establish a pattern, right? Architecture means like there is a pattern behind some whatever code you write or whatever design you build, right? And we have to be aware of, as we are aware of a lot of design pattern, but the good architecture allows you to form the problem in a one specific. It should allow you to shape the problem into structured code, right? And whether it's iOS engineer does that or Android engineers does that, the result should be the same. Right? The produced code looks almost identical. That's the benefit of good architecture or good pattern. And does not the more important thing is does not let engineer to do stupid stuff, right? Because when you do stupid stuff, the application break or code breaks and problem incident happens. We call it incident, and incident is like a big thing because when incident happens, you pretty much spend entire team's time to explain what happened to the management that hey, something because of this code this happened, and takes time away from the development. And the second part is the process part. Process part is I would consider is more important because it's a human part, right? Which requires a good control over like how do you explain the product or design that what what the pattern allows and what pattern is not allowing. And I think it's like engineer's job to actually figure out what is possible with this design pattern and what is not possible with design pattern, and work with product and US to come up with the common understanding. Like, hey, we can do this other, you can have this nice pretty UI in this one part of application and standardized UI in other part of application, but then you lose on quality, right? This is how you explain. I mean that I'm just giving you an example, but there could be many rationale behind that. Is there any question so far? No? Okay. So moving on. So Uber's architecture has some goals. So first goal is 99% reliability, 99.99% reliability, which just means the application cannot break no matter what happens. Support growth of the app, meaning that you can build more functionalities, you can build more teams around it, you can build more businesses around it, right? So that you don't have to say, okay, down the line 3 years, I thought like, hey, we didn't thought about this. Uber can support this kind of business. It should not happen. It should allow you to scale at any level, right? And connects the design and engineering, as I mentioned, that it's the human part, right? Processes you have to put in that connects both human design and engineering. And the one thing I stress upon is inbuilt monitoring. This is the most important part because, as I mentioned earlier, that it takes 2 weeks to see what your code into users end. It takes 2 weeks, right? And you need to know if something is wrong. You need to know that at the first day what went wrong, and that's why you have to have a solid monitoring inbuilt, right? So architecture should give you the monitoring by default. You don't have to think through like how do I monitor this particular button event or click event, right? And then experimentation. It allows you to do a lot of experiments like A/B tests. Like if I want to release this feature, this feature is not working, change it, create a new feature, see if it's working. It works, scale it. So this kind of things you should allow. And performant, communicative, and platform agnostic. Platform agnostic I mentioned earlier. If I talk about the problem in iOS and Android, I should not talk about the fragment or view controller. I should talk about the business logic problem itself, right? So architecture allows you to do that. So they take you away from the what screen is instead of what business logic is. Okay, so at Uber, we created REAP architecture and app framework. So these are the basic building blocks of all the apps at Uber. So REAP architecture is pretty much allows you to create it has inbuilt testability. So every piece of code you write is testable, right? You have to, so we stress more upon unit tests. That's why we can ship code at this quality. right? So it's unit testable code. Every single line is testable, and reactive data flows. So I'm not sure how many of you have worked with React RX Swift, but it's very heavy on RX Swift. So we use RX Swift in communication. So I'll go through the what is RIB into detail, but just bear with me. Understand that this is like a architecture pattern that uses this thing. And business logic isolation. So every RIB is a small unit that runs one particular business logic. And RIB does the routing meaning that it calls the another RIB, and that RIB calls the another RIB. And scoping. So RIB allows you to scope the problem, right? For example, if you're creating a new line of business like Uber Eats, so RIB allows you to scope that domain very well. So that's why you cannot do stupid stuff like you want to call from that scope to the other scope. And dependency management. So dependency management is built in, so it allows you to scale, right? We'll see how it translates into code dependency management. And then next thing is app framework. App framework is pretty simple. Like it's all set of libraries that allows you to do a lot of basic building blocky stuff. For example, networking, analytics, code gen, storage, monitoring, everything, right? So it's just like all these libraries we need to do stuff, right? To make a service call, so you need networking library. You want to send the analytics to analytics platform, so you need analytics library, all those things, right? Okay. Now let's go to the RIP framework. Okay, someone has a question.
You mentioned code gen. What type of code you generate? Is it like assets?
Okay, so code generation is we normally use the contract between server and client. We use this thing called thrip files. So thrip files is basically the models you generate. And the way we don't because the reason why we are using thrip file, I think thrip format itself is coming from the Facebook. Facebook created first the thrip format, allows you to create a contract between client and server. And the good thing about that thrip is they built the tooling around it. So what you can do is you can pretty much create the models using the common thrip file on mobile side and using the same thrip file on the backend side, right? So you can create two separate set of models, but the thrip file is a source of truth, right? So it's not like a simple JSON blob that we send. That JSON what we send to the client has to follow that thrip file.
Is it similar to
Does it make sense?
generation?
You can consider that GraphQL generation, right? But in the GraphQL generation as well, but you have to have that, I think, GQL file, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is like creating a common contract, right? At the moment, Google has a new standard. We are moving to that one, gRPC. So I think that's the new standard we are using. But just to make sure that context people understand here, the thrift is a common language that server and client can talk.
So that TIFF file, is that an online tool or how it produce? That
Thrift is you can create a thrift file, right? Thrift files. Sorry. Yeah, so this is a library you can just download this tool and create thrift files.
Okay.
And it's widely used. It's very old, but still used.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so RIP architecture. So RIP, what is RIP? Is acronym actually. It's a router interactor builder. So only 3 components. It's kind of I would say when I say architecture, it's not actually architecture, it's a framework. Because the difference between architecture and framework is architecture, you can implement the way you like, right? You can have your own freedom to how do you implement that architecture. But framework is a set of rules that you cannot go beyond that set of rule, right? So when I mention the RIB architecture, actually what I mean is RIB framework, right? It's a library that allows you to do certain things and not allow you to do certain things. So you write your code in that context, and that's why it's RIB framework. So what is the difference between the traditional architecture, MVVM, MVC, and Viper is they're all view-based architectures. So basically view drives them, and you see them as a giant state machine. So mostly if you end up the application writing application with the RIB, sorry, not with the RIB, without RIB, I mean MVVM or MVC architecture, what you'll see is like it's a giant state machine. Like if this happens, go to that screen. If that happens, go to this screen, right? So there's like a view-driven logic that you end up writing. And most of the case is like once whoever wrote that logic goes away, it's hard to maintain because no one knows where to put next code, right? There's no logical place in your mind that how do I put this particular code into which place. While RIP framework allows you to do the cross-platform collaboration, meaning that you mostly use the same language. If you're iOS engineer or Android engineer, you try to use the same language because now it takes away from the framework and allows you to talk in a what do you call business logic sense, right? So you only talk about business logic, not the view or how does it work, right? And it only you don't pretty much end up writing a lot of global stuff. You write logic inside this framework, in logic inside this interactor, which is like a place where you put your business logic. As I mentioned earlier, you can test it. It allows you to test it fully, 100%. So there's a lot of tooling built around the RIP framework. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll talk about the dependency injection. There's a nice tooling around it. There's a code gen tooling like Thrift, and all those things are inbuilt. And the one more important open close principle, I think you might have heard about the solid principles, but not this. Open close principle is one of the principles is very important here. So it's open for extension and close for modification, right? So you can extend RIPs in multiple ways, but you cannot modify whatever existing logic. Not modify logically. You cannot do stupid stuff to that particular RIP. It enforces that kind of rules. Structure around the business logic. So mostly, as I mentioned, business logic is the hero of RIP. And you can force explicit contract, right? Certain data should not be available to certain part of the RIP, and certain data only available to certain part of the RIPs. You can do that too, right? We'll see in the code as well. Okay, so what is RIP actually? So it's interactor, router, and builder. So interactor is simply just focuses on a simple, small business logic, and it only knows that how to route to the next RIP. And what is router? So router is it basically knows how to move to the new RIP, create and move to the new RIP. And what is builder? Builder creates both a router and interactor, and its only job is to provide dependencies, right? And what it does internally. So first, let's look at the internal communication of RIB. So as you can see here, I'll zoom out a little bit. So interactor is a hero. It has all the business logic. And interactor tells the router that, hey, move to the next RIP, or interactor tells the presentation, the present particular view, right? So presentation and view is kind of optional component. RIP may or may not have a presentation views, okay? And builder just builds all of this, and component is pretty much provides the dependencies to the builder, right? So I'll skip this. Okay, state tree. So as I said, in MVVM, MVC, and other architecture, you pretty much create the state machine. Instead of here, you'll create a state tree. Right? Let's take an example of at Uber, right? So at Uber, we have this. So every rib. So if you see, every box is a rib, right? And it holds a particular state, and it allows you to move between the state. It pretty much forces you to move only to one state. For example, if I root rib has a Uber access token, then you can end up in either two state. You can be logged out or logged in. If you have valid token, you will end up in logged in state. If you have invalid token, you will end up in logged out state, right? Same way, say for example, you are on trip, meaning that you are in the middle of trip, you will end up in on trip side of tree. So only this part of the tree will be activated, attached, I would say. And suppose you are off trip, then only this part of the tree will be activated, right? So this is how you switch between the tree. And only if you logged in, then logged in will only care about how do I show request and menu. Request menu is meaning that, like, if you see as soon as you log in into Uber app, you'll see the ride request, what do you call, location editor, right? Where you enter your location. And you see the menu of like how many products are available in your area, Uber Ride, Uber Pool, Uber X, and other things, right? So those are this part. And when you on trip, you'll just see map with the routing line, right, where you're going. So that's this part. But every single rib only cares about what it wants to do, right? It has no other logic and knows nothing about what's going on around other ribs, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So
So,
now
so
communication.
every
Go
entity
ahead.
of every entity of that tree has own rib, right? Like a
When you say
login.
entity, meaning?
I mean that the login request menu. I consider as
Yeah, it's a logical component. I would say imagine that those are the logical component that you come up with business logic, right? When business said, I want login and log out, right? I want login. That means that you have to have created two separate logical component that, okay, which is responsible for login and another will be responsible for log out.
okay.
Does it
So
make sense?
yeah, so that particular module, or we can say that that entity, it has
Mhm.
rib framework, right? Uh, how
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture. It's a unit, right? Unit makes out of three classes, router, interactor, builder. So this logged in will have three small classes in it, router, interactor, builder.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Communication between rib. Now rib, okay, I think we created this tree. Now how do we communicate? So every rib needs to pass in data and pass out the data, right? So data needs to be transferred between this rib, right? How do we communicate with each other? So there are two kinds of communication. There's upward communication and downward communication, right? So if you see here, a root rib can communicate to this favorites or any of leaf node, right? It's possible. And there is menu rib can communicate to logged in rib. So menu rib cannot communicate to root rib. It can in certain cases, but I will omit for this discussion. But imagine that menu only talks to logged in rib as an upward communication. As a downward communication, you can talk to from any rib to any rib, right? And we'll see how it happens as well. So there are global states, right? So in every application, there are global state you want to implement. Say for example, location streams, right? So there's a location. Uber Apps works basically on location, right? Location is the key, where Apple or Android device native operating system returns the location information to the application, and inside the application we capture this location information and pass through all the all the ribs. So those are the global streams that we need to pass. Imagine that you have a particular society, and in that society, there's a pipelines are going in, and there's a one single source of the water that basically flows into all homes, right? So that's kind of a global streams. Okay. Now, yeah, show me the code. Okay, so how all of these things work. So here, I have created a simple application. Actually, this application is part of the Uber rib is, by the way, this rib framework is open source and it's on Uber's GitHub. Go and take a look. And I got this application from there and I modified it a little bit for this conversation. So this application is very simple. Here we are going to have a 2 players. So this is a login page. Here we are going to have a 2 players. I'll just log in using the player 1 and 2. And we have a 2 games here. One is tic-tac-toe and random win. So when I go to the random win application, A11, right? And so we'll update the score here and tic-tac-toe application. So we just try to, okay, whatever, A11, right? And we'll update the score over here. So very simple application. And now we have to understand like how RIP, whatever the principle we saw earlier, how it's implemented over here, right? So let me see how it will create a RIP tree, right? So here we have a root RIP, and there is a logged out RIP and logged in RIP, and we will have another kind of a middle view less RIP. This RIP has no view. It will have an off game RIP, we call it, meaning that you are not on any game. And from here, you'll have either tic-tac-toe RIP or you have either random win RIP, depends on which button you press, right? So this is like a flow will go into, logical flow will pass into. Does it make sense? So let's start with the root RIP, right? So as I mentioned earlier, it has 3 components: router, interactor, builder, and sometimes presenter and view, right? So here I will create, so now if you can see here, it allows you to create a small space for root RIP, and it has all router, interactor, and builder, all of them in the one logical space, right? So if we start from here, we'll see, we'll explore first the builder. So builder allows you to build root interactor and root router, right? It's a classes that we created that represents this RIP. And interactor, if we go inside the step in the interactor, so interactor's job is simply launch the logout RIP, right? Initially, we'll launch the logout RIP. So these are the, if you see here, did become active is a kind of a life cycle RIB lifecycle events that automatically fires when RIB attach. And when RIB detached, will resign active lifecycle event, right? So this is a common framework. This is the same framework available in Android as well. So in iOS and Android, we'll have a similar framework. And mostly you need to write code over here and did become active. And this is the only place in Interactor where you write your own business logic. And this is the only place. You cannot write your business logic anywhere else because it will not allow you. If you try to write into router, very illogical place, then at Uber we have a code review process that definitely some other person catches that you cannot do that because framework enforces that. Okay, I mean, first of all, in router you will not be able to write anything because it requires a dependency, and in router you won't be able to pass in dependency. But I'll talk about that later. Okay, so any question on this RIB? Like, I can answer that. I know it's a bit complex. I mean, I'm not sure you have heard or looked into the RIB framework before, but if you don't understand, please raise hand. Okay, I'll move on. So here you build the root rib, and I think where you activate root rib is from app delegate. So if you see here in app delegate, we create an instance of root builder, right? And we simply put the window into this internally sets up the view. You see inside it. Yeah, it's a root view controller, make view visible, and simply loads the view, and the entire rib lifecycle gets activated, right? So this is like a main entry point where everything starts happening, right? So now if you go inside the root interactor, which we went into, right? At this point, okay, so first thing is where is that? Yeah, root interactor, root view controller, right? So what's in the root view controller? So first we see this animation, right? So here we enter player 1, player 2 name.
The meeting la.
Okay, cool. So from there, either we go into logged out rib or logged in rib, right? So root view controller will launch the logged out rib. So if you look at the logged out rib, so because you initially you pretty much don't have any screen, so you go to the logged out rib. So if you see the view controller, it will show you the names of the player, the text boxes of the player, right? And at the end, you'll see the listener.login. So actually this rib initialize this logged out rib. So it passes the listener into it. I think when you have a chance, go and look at how the framework internally built. You'll see this common pattern that this root rib will passes the listener into it, and this listener gets called logged out interactor. And now with the player names, you call login, right? So login rib will simply build login router. So this is now we are moving from here to here, right? So we detach this rib and we attach the login rib, right? And now if you see the login rib, yeah. So we'll start with the logged in builder, right? So login rib is simply takes those two player name as a dependency and pass it into login interactor, login component. It's basically login interactor will just goes all this information. If you see here, this is component, right? And login interactor here, we will simply present the screen. So we are logged in, right? Launch game. Does that make sense? Any question till here? So simply we are building 3 building blocks, right? Router interactor builder, and we're switching between those things. We are attaching and detaching. And now when I press this button, tic-tac-toe, I will create a new rib for this tic-tac-toe rib and then launch that, right? So this is how we separate out the building blocks of entire app, right? Now you don't see any logic here and there. You'll always see business logic inside the interactor. You will always see the business logic inside the interactor.
I have one
So if
question.
you see logged out interactor, yes.
Yeah, how it is different from the Viper model?
So Viper model is basically it is kind of a what do you call it? Condensed version of Viper model, but it basically allows us to create how do I explain this? Viper model is pretty much gives you the
Because I
ability
can't
to
see the view controller.
sorry, because Viper model always requires the presenter and view controller. I think the rib is basically can be viewless ribs as well. There is a reactivity is also associated with this rib as well. So you can have reactive rib, meaning that it can be attached and detached on given event. Does it make sense?
But here in router rib model as well, like we are passing the view controller.
And you have choice not to pass as well.
It- in the-
So I guess he's saying that presenter
okay, understood.
So you're saying the presenter
Yeah,
is
it's
optional in
optional.
RIP, but Viper it is a mandatory.
Yeah. But that's not the
Okay,
only difference. There are multiple difference. There are many things inbuilt, like for example, life cycle, right? So you won't get the life cycle events. Like in Viper, you are free to write your own logic anywhere. You can write, I think, logic into router as well. But this provides you the life cycle event. I'll show you that what other life cycle, when I talk about the stream, I'll show you that how it does the memory management itself for you for stream. Because in Viper, imagine that you have to write the RX with code, right? So how do you dispose that stream? You have to manage the dispose bag object yourself at somewhere. And I think it's up to the programmer that how they will manage the business, dispose bag, right? Here, all of those memory management also part of the life cycle of the RIP. They're inbuilt. Does it
Okay.
answer your question? Yeah,
Okay,
that's why
maybe
I'm saying that it's
maybe
not
we
the
will go forward. Maybe I'll yeah.
yeah. That's why it's not the architecture. It's a framework. It has a lot of things inbuilt. The version we are using at Uber, it has a lot of things like analytics and all those things are inbuilt.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so this is how everything will work in this one. So you pretty much attach and detach ribs, and you pretty much build the entire rib tree. I would call state tree, and allows you to condense the entire business logic into testable chunks, right? Okay, so if you don't have any question, then I'll move on to next
We have
topic, which
couple of
is depend. Okay, go ahead.
we have couple of questions in Zoom message. Can you see?
Okay. Does RIP support Swift UI as well? Yes, it does. Is Uber RIP framework is also available for Android? Yes, it does. Will be recording be shared after call? Yes. I'm answering on behalf of Arjun. Okay, I think that's all the questions, right? Okay, so let's move on to dependency injection. So I think most of you know that what is dependency injection is a programming technique that basically allows you to separate the creation of the object from the usage of the object. So you can simply focus on using rather than creating. You don't know how it's created. So imagine you building a photo service like Instagram. So you create a view controller, you have a photo service object. So in a simple app, you try to use the service inside the view controller or something like that. But it's a very bad choice. Like imagine that tomorrow this photo service grow into something else, and you want to replace this photo service with something else. Then as many places this photo service is written, you have to go and change all of this, right? And it's a very bad practice. So ideally what we want to do is we want to create a photo component, and it's create an interface that uses the photo service, and that component you pass it into view controller. So now tomorrow you want to change the photo services. Photos view controller has nothing to do about like who created, when created. It just uses it, right? And dependency injection is used heavily into RIP framework. So let's go back to the code. Okay, so now imagine that when I log in, I want location of the users. I want to do something with the location. I'm just giving you, it's a very bad example, but I'm just taking the example that, hey, I want location, right? So what are the options? So for example, logged in rib requires the location of the object because I want to just change the color of the screen when I reach to the certain location, right? I'm taking the example. So what are the options I have? So I create a location object over here, basically the class that reads the location from the hardware and initialize over here. Or I can have another class, which is a global class, I would say singleton, and then it has all the RIPs will have access to that class, right? So there are two patterns I have, but those both patterns are bad because now imagine that this also requires the location. So you have to copy the location object over here, initialize there. Now anything changes into that location object, you have to change into all of the RIBs. And the Uber-like application where you have thousands of RIBs attached together, then changing every single place is like nightmare, right? And with the singleton idea, yes, you can change it with the single place, but you have less control over who will get the location and who will not get the location, right? Say for example, this logged out rib has nothing to do with the location, but if you use that singleton object there, then you will pretty much get the location. I don't want this part of the tree to have access to the location. I want only this part of the tree to have access to the location. So you cannot do the full control over there, right? So how do we solve this problem? So to do that, we have a dependency injection, right? And replace nicely with the dependency injection, right? So let's say, let's go to the logged in rib, which is this rib, and let's see how it gets the location access, right? So let's go into the logged in builder. And if you see here, as I mentioned, the component passes the dependency into it, right? So for this one, what we can create is, you can simply, in dependency, we can simply ask that I want location. So we have to create some object that gives you the location, right? So for that, as I mentioned earlier, we are heavily use reactive RX Swift, right? Or reactive X, or whatever you can call combine if you using the pure Swift. So here I created the two version of protocol. So first is immutable protocol, and second is the mutable protocol, right? So immutable protocol allows you to only read the location. A mutable protocol allows you to update the location, right? And then I'll create a concrete implementation of the object of the mutable string, right? That has both in it. So if you see here that whoever is updating the location can update the location via this update API, and whoever is reading this location can read this via this immutable object, right? So my idea is simple. I'll make root rib responsible to create a location. I will make logged in rib just allow you to use the location, right? I will not allow logged in rib to modify the location. So this kind of control is possible with this kind of pattern, right? Otherwise, the older way of writing code that you can mess up, because now this rib can update the location, this rib can update the location. So you have no idea who is updating what. Okay. So go back to code. So this is the object we created. Now, if you go back to the root rib, so inside the root rib, we create the root component is basically responsible for providing the location, right? So here we'll create the object of the concrete implementation that we created. This will be used by root rib itself to update the location, and this will be given to the downstream ribs to read the location, right? So let's see how this is used inside the root interactor. So in root interactor, if we go into root builder, so if you see here, I have passed the mutable location stream inside the interactor. And if I go inside the interactor, what I'm doing is simply updating the location. This is the dummy location, but imagine that here, location service, or the location get hardware location, right? Which is updating the location every single time location updates, right? So this stream is basically pushing the new location every time location updates. Now come back to logged in rib. Sorry, logged out. Okay, so logged in builder says I want location stream, right? Now simply, as we have declared the location dependency inside the root rib, which is the parent rib of this rib, we'll automatically get the location because it's inside the component. And we simply use this location stream, pass it into logged in interactor, right? And here we'll read the location. So this is a stream that every time the location updates, it will be updated. I can do something like, so this is kind of business logic I write, like, hey, if location is particular vicinity of this particular location, just launch the game, right? We have done similar kind of things. We do a lot of similar kind of things in Uber. If you are near to the airport, show where are the parking spots are there and all those things, right? So you can do similar things like that. Okay, so this is how dependency injection allows you to pass in the location services. Now, suppose this rib wants the location information, right? So simply we just go and declare the location. It is like off game builder, right? We can just say var location stream. Yeah, that's it, right? Now this rib also gets the location. It's very simple to pass the dependency. Now imagine that you can pretty much have this global streams or local streams as well. Like for example, I can declare the stream over here and it will only use by this part of the tree, right? So it's very isolated. You only create the required data streams that is required by that part of the tree and allows you to make it super safe code. Does it make sense? Any question here? Okay. So this is how the stream works, and this is how the communication works inside the ribs, right? So moving on, we covered dependency injection. Yeah. So now plugins, right? So this is another good pattern we use at Uber. So it plays nicely with the ribs, and there's a lot of dependency injection plays a lot of roles in how the plugins are created, and this is what allows to create a separate teams, separate organizations, create a new things. I'll show you in the code like how it works, but it is kind of a de-risking the entire experimentation. You can pretty much create the different libraries and plugs into the Uber's core code, right? So the example is this. So if you see, this is the location editor screen of Uber. And if you see this red blocks are their plugins, right? Because Uber Eats advertisement has nothing to do with Uber rides. But we want to show that because it is a good promotion and you can book the food while you are on the way to airport, right? something like that. You can do that. And for example, the top part, which is, you can see these tiles, and those part is geography based. Say, for example, Uber pool is not available in US, but it's available in India. So you can, based on geography, based on event, you can switch between the products, right? You can allow certain products, you can disallow certain products. So you can do so many things with the plugins. So it allows you to safely launch code as well. So this is like, plugin is the reason we directly ship things to the production, because if something goes wrong, we turn off the plugin. So code is disappear. It's a part of the feature flagging. There are a lot of frameworks out there for feature flagging. There's a open source framework as well. So post hoc is one of the good open source framework. That at Uber we have our own internal tool, but post hoc is kind of a really good tool that you can use to do a feature flagging combined with the plugin, so you can release code in the production without any issue. Okay, so plugins show me the code. So this tool, so these two things. So now if you can see here, that we have two different buttons, meaning that they're two separate games, right? We click on it and it launches the new rib, and it completely takes you to the different world, I would say. Let's consider it's a different world, because from there you can do a lot of things, right? If you win game, you get different prices and stuff. Like, you can go on and on. Like, if you want to build more screens and more features on top of that. Similarly, if you go inside here, you can create the new set of games, right? So it's its own world. So how do we build the plugins inside? So these two games are attached as a plugin in the logged in component. So right now in this code, the plugin is very simple compared to what we use at Uber Codebase, but just to give you an idea how this plugin gets attached here. So here we have two plugins. So if you go inside the plugin as an adapter, it simply has another rib. It just goes and builds the this random win router and interactor, right? And now this application takes off. Tomorrow you want to write a new plugin called Chess, right? You launch a new app called Chess, right? And you can now safely build a teams around it, right? Now, because Chess is a new team, new plugin, and they have nothing to do with the random win or tic-tac-toe adapter. So those are the teams that work independently, right? Now you can scale more and more features around. So you can build the entire chess team that works on chess. Now, if chess takes off, then you can build Super Mario, right? So now the beauty of this is, like, it takes the same set of dependency into every single plugins, right? So whatever the core dependency you created, built, you don't have to rewrite for those plugins. It automatically gets in, because dependency is taking this root rib dependency. It's taking the dependency till this dependency tree over here. So imagine that you're adding a new ribs over here. All the dependency till this part of the rib tree gets it for free, right? Now, and that particular set of adapter can create their own dependency, right? So it's completely separated, decoupled code you can write. Any questions on plugin? No? Okay. So let's talk about the advantages of plugin. So it's completely separate. It's nicely uses the dependency inversion to pass on the dependency. It's pretty much almost free. You can say all the dependency will get the plugin, and you can pack those individual ribs into libraries, right? So that's also another. So you can random win adapter. You can create a library and just import the random win adapter, or you can create a random win library. So that library is pretty much completely separate. So go ahead.
How do I more? Uh, so छोड़ो. हाँ छोड़ो यार
Hello?
उसको बाद में.
Are you talking to me or someone else?
Vishal, Kushal here. So the
Yes.
dependency, can't we create a framework here as a plugin.framework file and then bind it? Is it possible?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like a tic tac or so, there is a that is a plugin.
Mhm.
So I think it is
Yeah.
a source file. So can't we create a separate framework file, tic tac dot framework file, and then we can import.
Yeah, that's what I'm taking. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So you can create. I'll take when I go to the build system. I'll take example of how do we create that separate framework, right? And then we pretty much import it.
So
Import as a tic-tac-toe,
plugin
right?
will play as a import. I mean, as a framework, right?
It can, right? You can write a plugin as a separate core inside the app as well, and you can build a framework that attaches as a plugin as well.
Okay.
So you have a lot of freedom, like however you want to do. Like some of the, say for example, this one, right? This makes sense as a library, right? Because I have each library which is already provided me this plugin, this view. So I just pretty much create a plugin and uh, call that rip that provides me this view and just attach over there. But if I have to do this one, this can be also plugin, right? It makes sense to be in this part of the rip because uh, location editor requires anything, right? I mean, location editor has many other stuff, right? Where if you go to the San Francisco International Airport, there are uh, multiple, uh, how do we say, multiple airline stoppage that there's the next thing you want to show, right? And that can be added as a plugin because not every address has additional information to show.
Okay.
So you can create a framework or you can have short answer is you can do both way.
Okay.
Yeah. So isolation enforced by compiler. So this is one the framework that we are using on Aruba internally. That framework itself and compiler itself enforces that if you attach the certain div as a plugin, then if it is not allowed to attach, then compiler complains that, oh, hey, you cannot attach the plugin over here. So this is like I took the very simple example over here as a plugin, but there can be a really complex version of it. Allows you to experiments, right? So it is so in plugin you can just simply say that if this plugin is applicable for this application applicable for the screen, then you can turn on, turn off. So that can be controlled by the backend. So this plugin at the moment is very simple plugin. It's just build it. But imagine that if you have something that tells you from the backend that, hey, this plugin cannot be attached. So you can just simply logically remove from this array, right? And it gives you the clear boundary of the businesses. So as I mentioned earlier, if you want to create a chess team around this app, you can pretty much go and build your own chess team and turn off when needed from the production. So you can turn it off from the production, right? So this is how the plugin is very nicely use all the principles that the framework allows us to do, right? So it's very in continuum of other parts of the framework that allows us to do. Okay. Now, next thing is build system, right? So for the build system, what we are using Bazel at Uber. The Bazel is an artifact first build system and operates by constructing and housing the build graph, right? So we don't use traditional Xcode build system because amount of code, like we have billions of lines of code, right? for that amount of code, the traditional build system is very slow, because the way I'll go through what Bazel is. So Bazel is general build system for Google. General meaning that it works for every build system, every platform like Go, Android, iOS, Kotlin, C++, whatever. Right? It works for everything, and great for big and complex projects like we have 1,000 plus modules, and it works for smaller projects as well. So, but at least gives you the faster builds. Okay. Now, what is the difference between?
Sorry, I could not get it.
Go ahead.
Actually. I could not get it. What is Bazel and the build system?
So Bazel is a tool, by the way. So Bazel is a tool that you can go and GitHub and download and install on your Mac, and you can run certain commands, and then you create a configuration file in your project, and it will examine that configuration file and build the Xcode project for you. The reason and the way I'll go into detail like how it works, but the way it works is basically allows you to do the build time faster, right?
Oh, okay.
Traditional build system like Xcode build system, if you press the play button, it only checks what file modified, right? And the timestamp, it checks the timestamp of the files, and it just blindly assumes that this entire module has changed. But the way Bazel works is it creates the hash tree of the entire modules, right? And only compiles the file changed.
Okay.
Right. That's the difference between Bazel and traditional file system, traditional build system.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning earlier, tracking the source modification times, right? Traditional build system, and I would call it deterministic build system, because it knows that what has changed inside the entire project. Right. So don't rely on metadata. It creates the hash tree and rebuild what has changed, right? Now, when you ask that, okay, creates the hash tree, right? So how, for enormous scale like Uber, like how long it will take to create a hash tree, right? So there are ways around that build system has, that you can go ways around and make your fresh build really fast, right? So I'll go into that one. So first thing we understood, like Bazel creates a dependency tree graphs. Actually, it's not a tree, it's a graph actually. So it's basically all the modules, and it creates the hash of it's called DAG. It creates a DAG, directed acyclic graph. Then we have to provide the configuration files, and Bazel will reverse engineer those configuration files to figure out the dependency of, okay, so this module depend on that module, and that module depend on this module, right? And it creates the entire graph first time when it runs. And Bazel can try to parallelize, like, so for example, date module and location module has nothing common in between. So you can compile those two together, right? Traditional build system can't do that. So parallelism is possible. Whenever not in all the cases. Suppose there's a cyclic dependence, not cyclic dependency, but there is a dependency where both modules are dependent on one module, and that module is updated. You cannot parallelize, right? Because both requires that first module to be recompiled. Now, this is the magic happens, right? Caching. So Bazel will cache all the changes into a large file, right? So all the depends on your module, like how many. If you have thousands of modules, you have a huge cache file. That's a pretty much cache tree. It holds it into locally, as well as, so this will help you to build it. This will basically build it for the first time, but it also allows you to set up the cache server at a remote server, right? So what is the advantage of this? This is you can build and save this cache on the server, and all the your team can get this cache for the first time. So your first build will be super fast, right? Because now you have already a cache. It knows what to build, right? So it doesn't build anything else which is not needed, and you pretty much have instant faster build. So all your will you reading the same cache, right? Which is updated after the final build runs on the CI, right? As I mentioned, it gives you the faster build because the only invalidates the hashes that is the file that is updated. And this is another advantage, is to handle the transitive dependencies. So transitive dependencies are like basically one module depends on another module, that module depends on another module, that module depends on it. It goes on at certain level, and imagine that the last module is changed, right? So you need to compile all of them, but you don't pretty much. Okay, so let's see how. So I got this basic what do you call template on the Bazel. I'll go through that so you can experiment yourself, and because it's very easy to set up, it's simple and it's nice. It's very fast. And imagine that if you have existing code base that you want to set up a Bazel, you have to delete all the workspace file and other things, right? So there is a way of migrating your existing project to Bazel. It's tedious initially, but once you do it, like it will be blazing fast, your compiler build time, and you will, because the most of the problem, I don't know how large code bases you have worked with, but every time I press the button, I have to wait for 1 minute. It's so annoying. Okay, so
So Vishal,
first is root.
every engineer needs to pull cache explicitly every time, or Bazel?
No, it's like we have tools that basically, so we have wrote tools around the Bazel that pulls out the cache so we call this artifactory repository that pulls out the cache from it.
Okay, and that job done by that system CI maybe automatically.
Not CI, we have local tools, right? So you're running the code locally, right?
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so as soon as you write, so for example, in command line, you write that, say, Bazel run Xcode project, right? So this first thing is it will just, I mean, we have tools that basically wraps this command, right? And in that tool, there's the first thing is get the cache.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. So workspace is the standard basic building blocks of the Bazel. So this is, you have to create this file. It's a root file, and simply there's a standard command that you have to paste. So it is actually a Python file basically. So you just pretty much copy paste. I mean, you can just copy paste this file, and it has some basic rules like what to get and how to certain rules for how to resolve certain dependencies. This is all inbuilt. So it's basically instruct the Bazel tool to how to set up the project, right? So this is like, you can just blindly copy paste this, and here you write your first build file. So build file just tells you that what's inside this directory needs to compile, right? So here we say that source app delegate will need to compile, like, sorry, not this one, sources app delegate. So this file needs to compile. As you can see here, they left this file. So this file won't compile, right? And here you have to mention that what is the other dependency I need to look for, meaning that Bazel needs to look for. So it looks for my module. So if you go inside the my module file, it has also a build file, right? So is this build file as a another sources file to compile. So it has another Swift file to compile, right? And it has a visibility. There are a lot of parameters here you can use. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. But I'll tell you what visibility does. So visibility is public, meaning that this module can be seen by all of the module outside of this folder, right? So just imagine that there are other multiple folders that they can also see this. That's also a dependency for my module is a dependency for them. Okay. So now imagine that every module has this build file, and you can just simply write this rule. And there are rules for test target as well. So it will create. Someone asked, I think you asked, Vishal, right? The framework. It will create a framework, right?
Okay.
So you can just simply import that into your code, right? And if you run this entire workspace, it will create, the output will be the Xcode project. And if you run the Xcode project, then yeah, you pretty much successfully set up the entire Bazel. Right? I took this smaller example, but I think someone has a question.
Does this also support linting?
Linting.
Swift format linting.
I think you can import packages that does the linting, and you can run the package before. I mean, you allow you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. You can run the commands that does the linting as well.
It allows to run pre-built commands.
You have to, first thing is you have to import package, Swift package manager. Like from Swift package manager, you have to import the package that does the linting, and you have to run the command that does the lint.
So it will be before the Bazel run.
I mean, it should be in the build file. I mean, you can pretty much create the rule over here. I think in workspace. I'm not sure about it, but it's doable because we are doing it. So I know it's doable.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next thing. Okay, I think that's it. So final thought. So if we put all of this thing together, like RIB framework, dependency injection plugins, and the build system, everything together creates the application that you can pretty much has a fault tolerant, and you can scale it seamlessly, right? So if you successfully manage to put everything together, you are already like 100 step ahead to any companies does not have the common language or does not care about the architecture, right? So this is like a solid architecture pattern. I think most of the companies that are using this kind of pattern, as far as I know, and I think this framework itself is an open source used by many. So yeah, take a look. And I forgot to attach the resources over here, but I'll do that later and share the slides. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much for the insight on today's event, and this is really into the list. So thank you so much, Vishal bhai, for share the insights.
No problem. Yeah. Any questions?
We have a couple of
I know I
questions.
rushed through everything, but depends on time that I had to rush through everything. But I think I want you to go at home and try download everything is open source, right? So download the code and try playing with it. Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Vishal. Saif here. So I do have a quick question on the dependency injection. Hope you can hear me right?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
So,
yes, I do.
so with the dependency injection and the RIB, so let's say we have like, I mean, I have actually posted the message in the chat. So maybe you can have a look while I speak. So let's say we have a login component, and from there on, we are moving from login to component A to B to C to D. I mean, let's say the flow is defined in this way, and D wants some kind of location stream or some kind of dependency. In that case, with the RIB architecture, my assumption is that we might have to make changes to all the previous components just so that we can pass the the required location stream to the component D?
Good question. Yeah, you have to, but the only changes you want to make is just the call, right? I'll show. That's a very good question, by the way. So I'll show you the quickest way of doing this is so if you see here, I made a change here. Suppose the last rib wants the this location stream dependency. You have to make a change in. You have to add this line into every single dependency. Say, for example, off game dependency here. So I would put it here as well. And then there's a subrib as well. So I think this is very tedious, right? Of course, because now you have to change one line. So, but it's better than creating and polluting every line of code on every rib with your own logic. But the solution for this one at Uber is we use Needle. Yeah, so this is another framework. I didn't took this framework into because I want to explain the dependency injection by code, but this Needle helps you to hide everything, right? So you just declare the dependency at root and Needle takes care of putting the code everywhere.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to know. I mean, basically the Viper has this problem where if you want to add any dependency for any low level, I mean, a module which is sitting at the lower level of the tree, then we have to make a lot of file changes. So I just wanted to know if Rib has already solved this. So yeah, seems like you guys have did that already. I'll have a look at the Needle. Thanks for answering.
Yeah, no problem. Another thing is it has a lot of inbuilt memory management. Like for example, I think someone asked question this like difference between Rib and Viper. So this inbuilt memory management, there's a lot of tooling around the analytics. So if you see here, you have to write normally if you want to write this into Viper, then you have to write dispose by dispose bag, right? So that object you manage your own self, right? But what Rib did is they bind it with the lifecycle. So dispose on deactivate this interactor, right? So basically, if this in this okay, if this interactor dies, right, this automatically location stream object will be deallocated, right? So basically, it's tied with the life cycle of the rib, and this is like a cool enhancement. So, but there's a lot of memory management issues. So it ties back to earlier conversation that supports the 99% reliability, right? So you does not let you do stupid stuff. So if you forgot to do dispose bag, or if you forgot to dispose that particular, I would say, particular stream, then that creates the memory leak.
Yeah, makes sense.
I have one doubt here that I mean, coming to previous question regarding that needle. So I thought that we using that global state with that RX, we can achieve that resolve that problem, right? Using global state. So every
That wasn't you mean global stream. I mean, I wouldn't call it global state, but it's a stream that initiated by the root rib. That same stream can be initiated by the logged in rib as well. So for example, let me go back to that picture.
If the A rib wants to connect with Z or last rib directly, they can connect, right, with the global state.
No, you can connect. You can use this that global. Let's not call it global state because that, let's say, location stream is originated from here. Sorry, is that? let's say this location stream is originated from here, right? So still all the sub ribs, right, needs to have access to that location rib. Now his question is, you have to update dependency. You want to add that particular line into every sub ribs, right? Where you want access to that location. Now that's also tedious. Like now you have to add one line to everywhere. But how do you solve that? So for that, Needle is the framework that basically takes care of adding that single line to all the subribs. So when you compile the code at compile time, it will start putting all the bridging code everywhere.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's how it works. Yeah, and Needle is a good framework as well. And there's an equivalent framework on Android, so it works on both.
Hi, Vishal. So one question on, I think it can be solved to Needle as well, but I wanted to confirm. So let's say from the logged in or logged out rib, I want to call any other rib. So I need to explicitly mention that particular rib's router inside my logged in router, right? So can you open logged in rib? Maybe I can explain from there. Logged in ribs router. Yeah. So if I want to open any other view from here, I need to explicitly mention same inside this place, right? So can it be dynamic in a sense, like rather than this off game builder, if I want to use any other builder, yeah, will that work dynamic as well, or I have to explicitly mention each time I want to modify something?
When you say dynamic, what do you mean by the dynamic? Is it like
So
you want to create an
I want to open some other screen, not the off game builder, but some other screen or other rib itself from logged in.
okay, so logged in, suppose you want to directly open the tic-tac-toe, right?
Tic-tac-toe, yeah. Yeah.
Say for example, right? So yes, you need to create the new build. So you can write something like that, private func attach tic-tac-toe, right? And you create the new instance of the tic-tac-toe builder and attach to this logged in.
Sure.
So this is the beauty of it, right? You can pretty much put it anywhere, and you can. So the rib does not need to know about where it is attaching. Say location router here. So this location location editor itself is a rib, right? So this small text box is a rib.
Yeah.
So this text box can be anywhere, right? So I want to put it here. I want to use this text box into some other screen. I want to use this text box into in the middle of this. I should be able to use it anywhere, right? It's
Okay.
because it's a piece of code that allows you to move this code freely without doing a lot of decoupling, right? Because everything is decoupled for you.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So all I need to do is that copy that builder related code, and then it will remaining will
Yeah.
be showcased. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Thanks for answering that.
So, hello, Vishal, Saif again. So one last question maybe. So let's say if we have released the app in production, I mean, I'm not sure if Uber has that kind of mechanism or not. I mean, curious to know. So basically, is there any way to make any runtime changes? For example, we have released the app to production, and the user flow is from A to B to C to D, and we want to have a different flow. Uh, so based on the JSON dynamically without having to do the app release. So how do you guys manage that at Uber? I mean, do you guys
Yeah.
follow?
So we have something similar like that. So we created our own framework for that. So you cannot you cannot allow, it does not allow you to ship change the binary. Like basically, if you write a code that is like you cannot change it, but thing is you can generate the screens from the backend code, right? So we have
Mm.
similar framework that pretty much generates the screen and changes the step, right? So for example, and mostly in Courier we use a lot. In Courier side, you're delivering the people, or you're moving people, or you're moving food, or you're moving packages, or you're moving something else, right? So there's a lot of things. It's a common thing, but you see the screens are different. So the flow is common, right? Because Courier, I have to do point A to point B, and the flow is pretty much similar, but now you have to, the screen looks slightly different, right? So instead of building everything every
Mm.
time, you just pretty much reuse everything and just switch flows, right? So we have
Yeah.
used it, but you have to design it well. I mean, it requires the upfront design effort, right?
So
If you're asking that, do we have something like a remote update? No,
yeah,
but
exactly.
if you carefully design, then you can do that.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, someone breathe.
Yeah. Hi, how's it doing?
Hey.
I have a question how do you guys manage the new release? Like when if I give example, there was a new release on maybe the 17 iOS, no, sorry, the 16,
Mhm.
and they were the logo and the pretty much the fancy stuff they have updated. So how do you guys manage that in the production code? Like because there is a bunch of devices. Apart from that, the different OS, Android and everything. So what's the logic behind them? Like in the production
When you
code.
say uh, when you say logo changes, and is it like Uber app, or you're asking the platform itself?
Yeah, particularly the application logo, like which functions we got in this iOS 16 or maybe later than the 16 one. So
I mean, we do the build time. I mean, so first of all, like we have the companies like Uber, Google, all those companies have a platform teams, right? So platform teams manages all the CI/CD pipelines and everything, and come up with the mobile frameworks and stuff. So I don't think there is a separate process. Like it's pretty much you have to build the version and you have to ship it, right? In order to do any change, even logo, right? You have to put new file and you have to ship it, and then it will change.
okay, so it is not connected with this business logic. The view is separately different. I haven't seen in this entire file. So this is what I'm assuming from my side, right?
I need to understand the question. Is it the logo? Are you talking about the app
No,
logo you're talking about?
yeah, yeah. The logo and the view is a totally different thing, which is not connected with the business logic. The business logic is a different thing. So which is running on
Oh,
Read.
so how you
Yeah,
update the screen, right? Is that your question?
not a particular screen, but the limitations of the screens. Like few versions is not supposed support some of the features and particular
Oh yeah, okay.
updates.
That
Yeah.
okay. So there's a hard rule at Uber, like we only support current version -2. So
Okay.
everything is supported pretty much. So if
I got
you
it. Got it.
any
Afterwards,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Current version -2. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Uh, do Bezel support CID?
Yeah. Hello. I
Yeah.
think you're cutting
So
out.
do Bezel support CI/CD, and how do you guys manage that?
So yes,
Am I
it's pretty
audible?
much, as you can see, it's a very command. Yes, I mean you've been cutting off, but now you are.
Yeah.
So Bazel is pretty much all command based, and anything that is command based can be run as a CI/CD pipeline, right? Because it's just a command you have to run, and yeah, it's pretty good support you have, and the lot of good industry leading projects runs on Bazel. Like entire Google, pretty much the build system runs on Google Bazel.
Okay. Okay, I think I need to explore more on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Juvin.
Hi, can you show in your code like how did you integrate the UI side of that application?
Sure. So let's take simple example. Logged in builder, yeah. No, this is viewless rib. Yeah, so this is a view ribs with the view, right? So if you see here, I created the component here. I mean, I created the instance of game view controller,
Okay.
and this view controller is passed into router, right? So if you go inside the router, then this view controller is so when this view is attached. So when this board is attached, this view controller will present itself.
Okay.
So all the
So,
logic inside
uh,
that view will be presented on screen.
okay, those view are done programmatically.
Yeah, I think I did programmatically. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. Thank you.
You can use Swift UI here as well, like whatever you want to use. Web UI, Swift UI, whatever.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I have one. How do you bind this with state management?
Okay. Can you give me example? I mean, can you give me specific
Yeah.
use case? State
Uh,
management meaning?
State management, I mean to say, let's say I'm on one screen. Let's say it's login, or maybe let's say in your case, Uber, when some data is loading or map is loading, and at that time you need to, it's not with the with respect to view controller, but with respect to the API. Let's say some or you need to fetch the data. It's kind of business logic thing. So how do you guys like maintain the state of that particular calls, or maybe some view controller, maybe, yeah. So the other view controller, maybe API call, or maybe any, I'm actually considering with respect to concurrency issues and serialization part, multitasking part, basically, when there is more read and write operation at the same time, when basically I'm dealing with one application which is live streaming application. So at that time we need to manage state, and multitasking and offline storage is also considered very crucial part in that thing. So how do you
Okay.
manage? Yeah.
If you can elaborate that, what is that multitasking you're doing and where you're doing right now? So if you can just give a bit of overview, then I can understand it.
Yeah, so basically, I have a game, ongoing game, live streaming. Yeah, so at that time, I need to update the, scores on the screen. And also at that time, lots of, background data storage is also going on. One part of the code is reading the data at the same in every second, lots of data is transferring. So yeah.
Okay, so got it. So most of the logic, that kind of logic goes inside the interactor, right? So as I mentioned earlier, here I showed somewhere that is logged in interactor. Yeah, so this is the stream. Basically, this is the one stream that is constantly looking at the location. In your case, there might be a multiple stream that is one stream is looking at the score and updating the score. So you can here write if this is the viewable read, the presenter update the score. Say this stream is giving you the scores, right? Somewhere, like in some part of the application. I imagine that your entire app is written with the ribs, and that's how I'm trying to answer this question. So imagine that one part of the application updates the score and you are getting the score over here. This is like a central screen that your user will see, update scores. And there's another stream that basically I'm just writing the bad code over here, right? Ideally, just create a functions over here. So write stream, right? This pretty much writer store update. So writer is a file writer object, or wherever you write it, you're writing in iCloud or doesn't matter. Update store. There is another stream you can. So the entire. So another stream. Let's take an example of the third stream, like picture stream, right? Show video or something like that. I'm just taking the example. So this interactor now handles all of this because it's all reactive, right? You can write many streams into this interactor. Lifecycle is automatically managed for you. So when this rib goes down, say for example, a user crosses out, right? User pretty much says exits the screen, then all of this thing will die. And as soon as user will enter the screen, all of this thing will start. You can write the stop, pause, or stop restart logic over here as well. Right? So everything is contained in this single rib, right? The only thing is like data where you're getting from has to be reactive, and it needs to be come from the. I'm not sure. This also gives you the data, but in your case, it seems like the different components gives you the different data, and you want to handle it centrally.
Yes.
I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, so this helps you to do that, right? So in one screen that you update this score, you write your data, and you want to show something else, you can present the ads on the bottom as well, right? So this fits nicely, right? This piece of code handles all the business logic well, and you can test it as well here.
Okay. Okay, I'll give it a try. Thank you so much.
Are you using some sort of RX solution in your code?
Pardon?
Are you using some sort of a reactive solution in your code?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
No worries. Okay, any other question?
Vishal, by any chance, do you know which tool you guys use for CI? I mean, is it Jenkins or any cloud-based tools.
Build Kite.
Sorry, what?
Build Kite.
Is it paid one?
Yeah, I think it's paid.
Okay.
Yeah, but Jenkins is nice as well. I like Jenkins.
Yeah.
More question?
Hi, sir. This is not a part of
Hi.
question of whatever the things are going on. Question is like, are there any further meetups regarding this stuff, or maybe like the group or any community?
When you say further meetups, I think Arjun invited because I know MobileFirst folks from MobileFirst, so that's why he invited. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Arjun can answer.
So
Okay.
every month we schedule a one session with different developer or different expertise. So you can join our meetup or LinkedIn group, so you get the regular updates.
Yeah. Uh, the meetup is like, oh, good, but I am looking forward for community where we can share a problem, or maybe we can share a thought or suggestions or anything.
So you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if you can,
Yeah, sure.
because there's a plenty of.
Yeah. Uh, link, what's the, like? Can I get your LinkedIn name or maybe like
Yeah,
the?
sure. Yeah. I think Arjun, you can just share whenever you share the recording.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
I also invite Vishal to our LinkedIn group, so he can whenever he get a chance, he can share the thoughts.
Yeah, sure. This is all iOS guys or all Android guys as well? Or...
That's for iOS guys.
Vishal, one question maybe. So
Yeah.
there are lots of framework comes in the market regarding that hybrid one, which with
Hi.
iOS and Android, like Flutter, React, PhoneGap, all those. So is there any planning at Uber side to migrate from native to maybe not all the app, but some part of Pace? What is your thought?
I think the complexity at Uber operates, it's not you cannot go to Flutter or React Native or this, right? Because there's so much going on in the one app that it's really hard to migrate. But there are some places that the web view is popular, right? So the internally Uber has tried many things to do the similar thing, but I think at the moment on if you see Uber, I think Uber Eats is not in India, right? So the main feed of Uber Eats is a web view.
Okay.
The main feed. Yeah. So there's an experiment going on to to convert into web view. But I mean it's impossible to go to 100% to this platform. I personally like React Native. It's my favorite.
Okay. Because most of
Yeah, but
because people now
yeah,
are
go ahead.
have a confusion or they don't have clarity where to move their career, whether they stick with the native or go with the
Mhm.
hybrid. Very common question.
Right. This day and age, you have to learn everything. You can't leave anything behind. You need to learn React Native. You need to learn iOS, Android, backend, everything, because there's so much thing going on right now. It's changing a lot. So make sure you have all the skills, pretty much, I would say.
Okay. And what criteria or any specific thing that someone needs to learn to get the job in this MNCs, I mean, that product-based companies like Uber or this kind of, because we used to work
Yeah, I
in
think that's a
startups and
yeah, go ahead.
normal projects where we do not face any challenges like we discussed here. We just
Yeah, I think
explore,
that's a good
yeah.
point.
So how, what is the, I mean, what the things that we need? Are there any resources? Is there any points that we have, we can learn on this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if you don't have experience working in the large scale businesses, then you won't get the opportunity to go through this kind of problems. I think that's a common issue. So what you do is you try to explore the large open source projects. You try to contribute that. You will have first an experience of the build system, because that's where a lot of complexity goes. That's the first thing I would try, right? And what else? I think for going into product company, specialization matters, right? You need to have specialization in iOS. But the thing is, right now this market is changing so fast, right? So there's a lot of opportunity comes into React Native and other areas as well. So you have to be prepared for this one. It's like you have to create this balance, like where to move. Right?
Okay,
And if you are interested in iOS, then you have to be 100% go deep into iOS. Right? Then you have to be top 1% in that field.
okay.
And yeah, that's I would advise. Otherwise, you have to go horizontally everywhere. Yeah, now I mean, these days you can just write. AI can write code for everything. So,
Yeah, so you guys also take a benefit of AI in this in development phase.
yeah, so
How it
that's
is?
a very
Are you
good
using
question.
any
So
plugins? Are you using AI plugins for in Xcode? Some chat
we have plugins that, yes, we have plugins that writes the code in Xcode as well. So Xcode internally we could try to create a plugin, but other platforms has better advantage, because Xcode is a very closed system. It's hard to do anything with it. But if you go in the uh, other areas like go back, there's a backend which is entirely written in Go, and there's Android. There's a lot of code you can write with AI. I mean, there's a lot of tooling around that basically writes code for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say like within 4 or 5 years, I think we'll write less code by ourselves.
Yeah. Arjun, could you please share Vishal's informations and attach this recording so we can take it as a reference?
Sure, I will share this.
Thank you, team.
Hi, Vishal sir. I have another point. Like we have one of the Slack group which is located in US as well. So like currently I'm in Canada, so I am a part of that group, but there is a very few members. So if you, I wish you can join that group. So
Yeah, which group? Send me, and I'll join.
yeah, sure. I'm gonna share the Slack link.
Oh, it's
So
on Slack.
we had a meeting in every month, so where the every senior person can join and do some chat and everything. So it would be a
Yeah,
fun chat.
definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, feel free to ask question if you have more.
So, Vishal, would you mind sharing your LinkedIn profile? I mean, I might have missed the
Yeah, I
conversation.
think Arjun will share. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And please do accept the connection request.
Yeah, sure. I not looking LinkedIn as often as
Uh-huh.
I should, but I hardly access, but I'll
Yeah, sure. Whenever you do have a look, please look at the connection request and accept at least the ones that have come from this meetup. Yeah.
definitely.
No, I had shared the link in Zoom message. So
Oh, this is Slack. Okay.
yeah, Slack.
Okay. Yeah. It requires a bit of setup. Go ahead.
Hi Vishal. So
Hey.
actually, I also have one question. It's regarding like a company like Uber. So what like if we have to be crack the interviews and all this? So where should we basically focus on the programming skills or like patterns, design patterns, or some DSA? Like what are the basic or main area like if we have 10 or 12 year of experience, where we have to be more
Mhm.
focused?
I think you can focus on mainly programming, right? I think the question, the essay is and system design, right? System design is quite interesting at Uber because um, everyone at Uber works on very large scale systems. So they have, I mean, they are pretty much understand like how particular because if you think about Uber is very interesting problem, right? It's pretty much
Right.
you are trying to simulate the physical world with the software, right? If you
Right.
think about none of the apps does it, right? For example, Google, take example, it's search, right? You pretty much
Mhm.
searching the information which is already in the internet. Facebook,
Yeah.
you pretty much see the reels and stuff, right? Which is user generated content,
Right.
right? And it is complex. I'm not saying it's complex due to nature of scale, but Uber is a particularly different beast because if you see you are moving the physical world. A
Right.
lot
Right.
of the people depend on it, right? If Facebook turns off for a day, I don't care, right?
Mhm.
But Uber turns off for the day, then the lot of people depends on it. Like a lot of drivers earn from it, right?
Yeah.
And it produces different challenges. You have to have like what in places of there is no internet, right? How do you handle those cases? And those little nuances, the little nuanced questions, like becomes the daily part of the conversation of the engineer, and you have to be aware of it. And when you go into the system design, then it's a bit tougher than other companies, I would say, because the nature of the business.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. But once you, I mean, cross that, like you'll see it's everything is same. Yeah.
So I have also one question regarding this stuff.
Yeah.
Like how to get an entry in this any of these MNCs like Because like if you check in the LinkedIn, there is a hardly opening for any this top 500 companies. So I think the recruiter is
You have
reaching
to
out and
try. You have to figure out the connections. You have to try
maybe the
multiple
references.
ways. The references, sometimes references works. Depends. I mean, that's a good question. How do you try that? I mean, create open source projects and then reach directly the hiring manager, right? I mean, just look at the um, who is hiring and just pretty much send directly resume to the hiring manager. Sometimes that work might, I'm not sure.
Got it.
Do you still have Objective-C code?
No.
No?
It's gone.
It's 100% Swift then.
100%.
Okay. Any dependency
Are you
or
guys
framework
using?
you are using is in Objective-C?
I mean, if it is library, right, the third-party library, I don't know. I mean, yes, it's just a library, right? We're just using it inside the Swift, but not particularly work with Objective-C code in day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly Swift directly. I mean, not mostly, 100% Swift.
Okay.
I mean,
Because still there are some demands in market for Objective-C. So that's why I'm like confused, like whether Objective-C is still in use or what.
it shouldn't be. Why it should be?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Swift is good. I like the Swift language because it's like mostly like Kotlin similar. So you can similar write the code in Java. Sorry, Kotlin.
What about Swift UI?
You can write Swift UI as well. I mean, we are moving
Yeah.
towards Swift UI.
Okay. Well, there are lots of challenges with Swift UI, I think. So at current stage, like in my application, I'm not able to completely move to the Swift UI because of the some UI controller, this table collection view mainly. So yeah, I was
When you say challenges, meaning that is it buggy or what do you mean by that?
yeah, actually, even like in my application, there are I think billions of users. So still, it's a basically very large scale.
Which application is it?
It is NBA.
NBA.
Yeah, National Basketball
Yeah,
Association. Yeah. So in that application, there are billions of users, and we are using Viper model here. But the thing is that some models we are not able to convert it into the Swift UI. Basically, as I said, that we have to manage the live streaming and other score things and other screens. So at that time, there is very, what I say, it's very challenging to convert them into Swift UI. So we are trying to convert small screens, which don't require any much logic or much efforts to Swift UI. So currently we're trying to move that screens, but not the whole, application.
So what is the challenge in live stream application? I mean, live stream view. What is the challenge over there? Moving that into Swift UI.
Basically, it's like what I say that we have, created some components which is reused in many places. So at that time, it's like every time we need to, we are using one library, which is creating the view Swift UI views, and it is binding it to the view controller basically. So currently we are creating view controller with components of Swift UI.
Okay. view
Yeah,
controller with
because
components of
yeah,
SwiftUI.
because that component is like used at many places. It's almost like we have around 20 to 25 screens in that. So in each area we are using the scoreboard, like let's say scoreboard is there or any game is there which is ongoing. We need to update the score on all the screens like that. So embedding all these things in Swift UI becomes very tedious when compared to Swift code, where while working with the collection views and other things.
But your most of the code will be if you are using Viper, if I'm correct, the most of the code is inside the view controller, right?
Yes.
That's where your UI code goes.
Yes.
Right. So if you don't have any other logic, then it should be pretty easy to move to Swift UI, right? Or does it your view controller has your view has some business logic inside it?
Yes.
Yeah. This is what I talk to you about. The difference between the rib and Viper is rib does not allow you to write code inside the view controller because it's still an architecture, right? You can write code inside the view controller.
Yeah. So currently we are going
it's really
through
hard to do in
lots
rib.
of- Yeah. So currently we are going through lots of refactoring part. So yeah, so it is a little bit tricky thing, I think.
Yeah, so you have to remove all those logic and put it inside the interactor, make interactor reactive so that reactively update the views, and then you can seamlessly change that view into Swift UI because you can bind the streams with the Swift UI. I wouldn't consider, but you can bind the variables that updates inside that UI with the from the interactor to that view controller via presenter.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll look into that.
Yeah, so that way you can move because we just started moving a few things with the Swift UI, and it's just simply converting the existing view into Swift UI. It's just that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for your insight.
No worries.
I think no. We have a final call. Anybody has any question? Okay. I think nobody has more questions.
One question I had on the chat, I put it. Is this framework or a similar framework available for Android? I just wanted to check on that.
Yes, it does. It's called Rib Android. Rib Android. So there's a needle equivalent of Android is also available, so you can use in the combination of both. And Bazel will work with Android, iOS, every type of code base.
Thank you, Vishal.
No worries.
So thank you so much once again, everyone, and thank you so much, Vishal Bhai, for share your insight.
Thank you. Yeah,
And
go ahead. Any question?
I request everyone to start the camera so we can take a make a memorable for today's event and take a picture together.
No one wants to do that.